Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So today we're going to be talking about a new topic and something that's really, really very relevant. I actually had a similar question about this yesterday from one of my clients that called me. And this will tie into a new change in the law as well. But yesterday, the conversation started with it's one of my clients that owns a hospitality company. And the question was, we were talking about some employment policies and preparing for the new year, when of course during that conversation I was talking about overtime and obligations to pay overtime and so on. And it was met with a question of whether that responsibility still exists for employers if the workers are undocumented. And I said, yes, of course. And so the client was really quite confused because in good faith, this was not an attempt, and I genuinely see that and agree with that. It was not an attempt not to pay it, but just the belief was that, well, if someone isn't eligible anyway for certain benefits or cannot pay anyway certain taxes, which is an incorrect assumption anyway, that he as the employer doesn't have to pay the overtime. And obviously with that is all different types of benefits. In this situation, we were talking about overtime, but of course I can imagine various other benefits as well, because the employer believes that the employee may not be eligible anyway for those benefits, or is unable to pay taxes anyway, or declare them, isn't responsible for doing so. And so that goes into a grand calculation. And this led us to a topic that Jane and I were discussing anyway because of a change of law, which is I-9 and I-9 verifications. So as of November 1st, there's a duty to use a new I-9 form. And that form is the August 2023 form. So any employee that was hired before November 1st, you can use the old form. After November 1st, you must verify their employment using the new form from August of 2023. And this ties in so great into that example from yesterday, as well as other clients that have called us with similar questions, because there is, although a divide between your responsibility as an employer to make sure that you are hiring an employee that you can verify their employment eligibility subject to the I-9 requirements, and your responsibility as an employer to pay wages properly. And just because an employer may receive information from an employee that the employee is undocumented, they may not be able to verify the employment. If the employer chooses to still employ them, they must pay them those wages properly. And then taking a step back, of course, the recommendation is always going to be that any employee that is hired must go through employment eligibility verification under the USCIS. Jane, I certainly wanted to hear from you on this as well, because I'm sure that you've had a lot of questions on this as well. I'm sure you've seen a lot on the I-9s.
Thanks, Irene. So basically, with I-9s, right, all employers must properly complete the I-9 for all the individuals who are whether, employment of the United States, whether citizens or non-citizens. And when our clients are onboarding their employees, most of the time they're not really calling us to have a question, right? Or even an employment attorney. A lot of times it's being done through a payroll provider. So that's why it's such a great tool to use and outsource, like an ADP, Gusto, Paychecks, or QuickBooks Online. So basically, like with I'll use an example of Gusto. They're obviously doing all the updates on their end. So when you're set up as a client there, you could onboard through Gusto. So that gives you a great opportunity not to always be on top of this research and know that this is the updated I-9 form that is being used, because that's what's going to be kind of sent to the person. And also, as a next step, it's going to be asking for the proper documentation, because it's not only the I-9 form, but it's also going to be the proof and copies of certain document requirements, which are going to be listed for you. And the person doesn't have to email it to you, but it could also be just done through the portal, which gives some people a peace of mind because they feel like they don't have to send it to somebody in a text message or an email. And it's really important to start using the correct I-9 forms, as Irene mentioned, because there's going to be pretty high penalties for this. So for the penalties for the incorrect or missing I-9 forms include such as outdated version. So imagine you filed an I-9, but it was an old version, still a penalty ranging from $272 to $2,701 per unauthorized employee for first-time offenses. That is pretty significant. So we're going to continue updating this. We're going to continue to kind of do research. And if we find some more interesting information, we'll definitely do a follow-up podcast. But if you do have any questions, really don't hesitate to ask us. Thank you.
Thank you.